our Boxing 101 residents who had never boxed before, had no idea. They got so good at it so quickly that we had to start Boxing 102. They walk out feeling so tough and accomplished, and it's fantastic. It's not about being the skinny model. It's about being strong. It's about using your brain and your body at the same time and solving complex problems and managing your stress and coping with challenges. And I hope that the message is getting to the younger folks. We're building this park, and it has features that address like 6 tenets of healthy aging. It's meant to be a way to get seniors back in the community, enjoying park space that they pay their tax dollars into, but get no more than a bench. We preach all the time, the magic is not in mastery. The magic is in the struggle. That's when you're building those new neural connections.
The number one fear associated with aging is dementia. The fear is well-founded. It's the number 2 cause of death, second only to ischemic heart and stroke, and it has tremendous impact on the families of those involved. The good news is the rate is coming down. It's coming down actually quite significantly since the 1970s, and the reason why isn't associated with drugs or surgeries. We're learning how to reignite our brains. My guest today is Dr. Sue Paul. Dr. Paul is the Senior Director of Wellbeing and Brain Health at Asbury Communities, and she's a contributing writer for Forbes Health. She's also taking her program to the streets and is the founder and executive director at Seniorscapes, a not-for-profit whose mission is to create more senior-friendly public parks. My hope is that we'll be able to take programs like Dr. Paul's beyond the 4 walls where they are today and out into the communities where you and I live. We need it, and we need it fast. There's some really positive news in our conversation, but in many ways, our work has just begun. I think it'll help you to feel better about your own brain health future, and perhaps it'll inspire you to want to do something in your community. Good to be with you again today. Let's get on with the show. Welcome, Dr. Sue Paul. Great to have you on the podcast.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
We talked a few weeks ago, really kind of coming off of some other discussions that I'd been having around cognition and aging, and you politely put your hand up, I think, to say, I'd like to have a conversation with you, and we did, and so I'm delighted to have you back now. You work in this space, as people will come to understand as we go through our discussion here. But maybe just for a grounding for everybody of all ages, whether you think you're old or whether you think you're young, maybe you can just talk to us about the common myths around cognition or cognition decline or not as associated with aging, and just kind of give us a grounding on some of the facts versus the things we see in headlines and the anecdotal stuff that we all hear.
Right. Well, that's a great place to start because, I see anecdotally kind of across the spectrum a variety of concerns. People think, oh, well, my mother had Alzheimer's, so I'm going to have it too. Just a foregone conclusion. Some people think everybody just gets it to some extent, and that's also just inevitable. Some people think you only if you have the gene will you get it. Like I think it's so strongly tied to genetics. But mostly I see this misconception about, there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do about it. There's no pill, there's no intervention you can do. It's just kind of you get it or you don't. And I think that's unfortunate. And that's sort of like the mission of brain health these days is to kind of get in front of it, just like we do heart health. You get in front of the decline. Yeah,
it's funny as you say it, and I had never really thought about it that way, but we think of the cures as there's going to be a surgery or a pill.
A pill, yep.
Right? Those are the 2 options we think of when we think of cures for things. And it's surgery on the brain is not an easy task.
Right.
It's the most protected organ in the body for good reason. So if I think about your work at Asbury, so maybe let's talk a little bit. Let's go right to, I want people to know the success you've had, because that's really going to be important. So, and then we can talk about who Asbury is and kind of give the context, but talk to me a little, again, if you will, about what you've seen in terms of who your patients that you're clients, what I'm not sure, students that you work with, and what you've seen in terms of improvements?
Well, it's been the most rewarding journey, honestly, because there's not a lot of templates to follow. We kind of invented this based on the research, and if it works in the research, it should work in real life, right? So it's that knowledge transfer of putting research into action. So at Asbury, we started with our independent living folks, our residential living community. My background is really in dementia and Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, neurodegenerative things. And there's plenty you can do once that process has started and once there's a disease that takes root, but there's so much you can do on the prevention end of it. But there was a bit of convincing to do to people who don't have cognitive impairment, or maybe just have a little mild, age-related cognitive changes, that they should do these things, right? It was really like a kind of bending the market to understand where this is going and where the future is, and convincing them that these interventions would work. So we based a lot of it on all the research around lifestyle that supports either delaying or preventing cognitive decline. And there's a ton of it, so it's really just a matter of circling the wagons around. Like every wagon is like an intervention, a lifestyle intervention, and we offer all of them, right? So it's kind of like not the secret bullet, the magic bullet. It's all the bullets. These are all things.
Yeah.
And that's
It's the
really how we
shotgun
designed
approach,
it.
right?
Yeah, that's really how we designed it. And and the other way to kind of talk our residents into giving this a try is that acknowledging that everybody has strengths and weaknesses. We all have things we're good at, and we have things we're not good at, and we tend to avoid the things we're not good at or we don't like. So, if I'm not good at math, I don't want to do math. Don't give me a math problem, or if I don't like socialization, don't make me socialize. But it's not doing those things that really put you at a disadvantage. So gently, we try to program, all the things you love to do with a little bit of things you don't like to do, because again, you need to have all the wagons, circled around your brain.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's our tendency to surround ourselves with things that are comfortable and familiar. And I'll give you an example of I went most of my career. I tell people, if there's one thing I've done, 100 different jobs, the constant has been change in terms of leading change and driving change. And so, totally kind of tangent here. I ordered some new running shoes because my old ones, needed replacing, and they changed the model. And I literally put them on 2 or 3 days ago at the steps. I put them on. I didn't like the feel of them. I wasn't big on the color. That wasn't a really big thing for me, but didn't like the new laces, because I loved the laces in my old ones. I didn't like around the arch or in the heel cupping. Didn't like that. I took them off and put them in the box and did a return slip to send them back. And I thought, maybe you just need to try it, because functionally, maybe they're actually better. And so I ran on them today. And it was like, it's that example of we are quick to say, I don't like something, and then I won't even go there, right? And I'm not going to tell you I had this eureka run and, oh my God, I can't believe, I almost sent them back. But it is a resistance to change that we all have to really deal with. And I think that's the reason I'm stressing it, is that is core to everything we talk about in terms of prevention in aging, slowing the aging, because without a little discomfort and challenge, we're not going to make any progress. So tell me about the progress you've been able to make with your residents.
91% of our participants have either improved their cognitive scores or maintained them, which I think is just a huge testament to how effective it is.
Right. And average age would be?
In the 80s, mid 80s, probably.
Yeah. Yeah. Where we would assume decline would be accelerating. Right.
Yep. And even among our folks who initially tested in the MCI range, we've been able to pull half of them back into normal cognition, which is probably the stat I'm proudest about.
Right. And remind people who don't know what MCI is.
Oh, sorry. Mild cognitive impairment. So
right,
they
which
tested
is,
range, a precursor
and when we
to,
say mild, anyone who works in it says, no, that's the label. But
right.
If it's your parents, it's not mild.
Right. There's definite changes that you notice at that point. Yeah.
tell me about the program now that supports it.
Well, the program's called Kinnections, and it's spelled little play on words. It's KIN, meaning movement, like kinesiology or kinetic energy,
Yep.
because movement's one of the lifestyle functions that we really promote. So it's a movement-based, lifestyle-based program. We do an initial cognitive battery of tests that include like a global cognitive, it's a 5-part test. It's a global cognitive score. There's domain-specific scores that look at memory, attention, executive function, 7 different domains, because it's not always your memory, which is a huge misunderstanding.
So just a little bit more, if you can explain when you say domain. So ask what would be the set? Can you list the 7 out, or give us an idea of what those are? So memory
Sure.
being one, or
Yep.
or is that just one alone? Because there's short and long term memory.
Yeah, that's just one alone.
Okay.
It's the category of tests
Right.
are included in there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the 7 cognitive domains that we look at include, well, we do a sensory motor, because that's really the basis of the whole hierarchy. Is your sensory motor functions, memory, attention, executive function, social cognition, language, and processing speed. And those 7 together, any one of those could be malfunctioning, I would say, or just not up to speed. And
Right.
it's any one of those 7 that could get you a diagnosis of dementia from your physician based on the diagnostic criteria, which is why we look just beyond memory at a
Right.
lot of things, and it's really informative to see, like, oh, it's really my attention I should work on more. It's not really my memory, or
Right.
So
And I guess also relaying it back to what's your past history. So I use memory as one example of, if you're not good at memorizing or remembering people's names when you get introduced to them,
yeah,
right, the fact that you're not remembering in your 80s is probably no surprise, because you haven't practiced and exercised that part of your brain very well.
right, yeah. Um, so we do this, like I said, this test for across all those cognitive areas. We do a dual tasking motor test, which is just a test of how well you can think and move at the same time, which is a huge indicator for falls, and it's really something that older adults struggle with. We do a quality of life indicator, which could be something, that's just through the coaching model. We talk about something that might stand out, like how is your sleep, any signs of depression or anxiety, because those are definitely things that can impact cognition, right? And so we get kind of a feel for if there's any of those things going on. And then we do like a subjective test, because that's important to see how do they think they're doing? How do they think their memory is? Because that's a great comparison to the actual objective information to see if there's a mismatch there too.
Right.
So yeah, so from those 5 cognitive assessments, we flush out where the weaknesses are, the things we can improve, and we come up with a plan. So that's in the nutshell what the program's about.
And then based on so the plan sounds like it must be individualized then, depending on
The
where the opportunities
plan
are.
the plan is really the secret sauce. That's the research put into action. So what are the things shown in the research? What are the activities you can do that are shown to improve different cognitive functions? So, for example, if memory is your problem, for example, maybe you could do some kind of dance or Tai Chi or something that requires choreography that you have to remember the next steps, and you're putting that memory into action. Research shows that executive function is improved through resistance training. So we might, put some resistance training into your plan. We do a lot of exergaming kind of protocols too, which is a lot of fun because the gamification keeps people interested, in playing the games. And that way we can work on attention and memory and different kind of games on there too. So the plan is really, really well researched and really fine-tuned to whatever that participant needs.
I gather you follow it up then with some frequency around the cognitive assessment. What like, is that like a 6-month kind of check-in,
Well,
or?
it's at least annually, and it's 6 months or sooner for anybody that we have some concerns about, or there's been a change. And I should mention that this is all done subclinically by our brain health coaches. But if there's an actual an issue going on that's beyond the scope of the subclinical level, we'll refer them out to physicians, neuropsych, or a rehab professional of some sort to do a deeper dive. So it's not that we do pull in more resources when they're needed. And in that case, there might be a plan or some recommendations that come in from a different professional that are like, why don't you incorporate some of these ideas based on our clinical findings? And we can do that too.
Right. So that probably means there's a lot more touch points when you're not
Yeah.
having to rely on physicians to do everything, right? Because
right. And the physicians can't do everything. They don't, they make global recommendations sometimes, but they don't really get specific.
yeah, it's funny as you're talking. It reminds me of what I write about the patient physician partnership. Essentially, you're providing a partner with a coach with your resident when they're going to
Exactly.
information wise, whether they're there or not. But and so maybe now, kind of, can you talk about Asbury kind of as an entity, because you're not doing this with a half a dozen people, and I don't want people to think this is just a one-off, a small sample group. Talk about kind of your work in Asbury and kind of in this program in Asbury.
Okay. So Asbury is a senior living organization. We have 10 communities throughout Pennsylvania, Maryland, Delaware, and Tennessee. And at our 6 largest campuses, we have our brain health program implemented. Each place has at least one brain health coach. We have about 8 on staff now. And it started at one campus, did really, really well, and then we were able to roll it out to the other campuses as well. So we have over 350 participants, probably system-wide. We're collecting all the data. The data is kind of centralized and analyzed, which is great. That we have actual results to share and tweak. So that's important too.
Great. And how big would the total Asbury resident population be?
Scott, that's a hard question for me.
I can find out.
I don't know the answer to that. It's
okay.
I want to. If I had to guess, I'd say 3,000 maybe system wide.
Yeah. And where I'm going with this is just to give people a sense of the scale, right? The number doesn't matter, but because that's always the challenge when we see studies and things. It's 12 participants, it's 20 participants.
Oh, right.
And it's exciting. But this is now we're starting to see programs like yours come out at much more significant scale. And so where I'm going to go with this is to everybody watching. Well, I'm not an Asbury resident. How do I get involved, and how do in this program or one like it? But
yeah. So I did mention that we have over 300 participants that have been assessed. So that's the overall stats. I don't know how many system-wide.
Yeah, and I could quickly see that could go to 3,000 and 30,000 with the infrastructure around it to support it, right? So
exactly.
So we'd be looking to you for you to lead a much bigger program, but that's the whole idea. Because inevitably, yours and other programs will scale up because the demand is there for it. So
exactly, yep.
And the 4 walls of a current organization are barriers, but again, I think the need will probably outweigh that, and we'll find ways to do that. Talk about some of the gamification and sort of because I think a lot of what excites me about this is the things that you have the residents doing are fun. Right?
Like I think they're fun.
Like I spent a lot of time telling people about all the things they should do, but I don't like doing that. We're kind of going back to where we talked earlier. So some of the things you've talked about, I think will surprise people in terms of types of activities that they wouldn't expect. And we're not talking about sitting down doing Sudoku puzzles.
Or not, yeah. So, your doctor will say, you need to do something new, like learn a language or pick up an instrument. And that's fine, but I don't really know many people who actually do that, right? So, and because our program is really movement-based, we wanted to introduce novel activities, because novelty is one of those things in the research that really is shown to improve brain health. So we brought in some things that most older adults haven't tried before, including a 22-foot rock wall, and an entire boxing studio with 5 different types of boxing classes that they can take. And along that issue of change behavior and things like that, it's really difficult to introduce something like that. They're like, why would I want to climb a rock wall? It's like, well, don't you want bragging rights to say that you climbed that rock wall? I mean, it's legit. The rock wall is not, it's not a sissy rock wall at all. But yeah, we challenge the residents to step it up. Do you want to, improve your brain health? This is learning something new. This is really elevating every part of your system into participating in these behaviors and these activities.
I think the whole idea of doing things you've never done before is just so core to the program, right?
It is. Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that's the whole idea is the ones who haven't done it are probably the best candidates.
Right.
Right.
Well, and we preach all the time, the magic is not in mastery. The magic is in the struggle. That's when you're building those new neural connections. Once you have mastery, you have really smooth neural connections pinging all over your brain. And that's great, except you're not building new ones, so the struggle, the challenge of trying something new, that's why they say that, is to build new neural connections. So, once they get good at it, and this is the gamification thing, we change the rules. Now go faster. Now only use your right hand. Now, we just change it constantly so that they're constantly having to adjust and their brain has to figure new stuff out.
It reminds me when we were learning a sport back in elementary school, right? We kind of got some level of competency and we thought we were there and like, no, no, no.
Yeah. Or you graduate up to the next class or
Yeah.
the next age group and you're bad at it again because everybody's better. It's the same
Right,
thing. It's the only
right.
way to get better. Yeah.
And the boxing, is that like, is that two people in a ring or what,
Oh,
what does
gosh.
that look
Well,
like?
that's funny because that wasn't a misconception. I had to put out that fire kind of where they're like, how do you call this brain health if we're hitting each other? I'm like, no, no,
It
no.
wouldn't be the obvious
We're not hitting. We
sport, but
have heavy bags and speed bags and lots of choreographed sequenced boxing punches, basically.
okay.
It started with, I should mention, it did start with rock steady boxing, which is an internationally, certified program for people with Parkinson's disease. So we do have rock steady as one of the offerings, but we started just general boxing classes, like learn the 4 punches, like the jab, the hook, the cross, and the uppercut. But you have to learn it right and left, right? And then we give each one of those a number. Each punch has a number 1 through 8, and then we shout out a sequence, of 2-4-1. Your brain has to remember 2-4-1. You're hitting the bag as hard as you can, and maybe you're doing a squat in between, or you shuffle your feet and you hit it again. So, like I said, our boxing 101 residents who had never boxed before had no idea. They got so good at it so quickly that we had to start boxing 102 to bring in new beginners and elevate these people, advance them to the next thing. And then it became cardio boxing, and then kickboxing, and then some other crazy boxing thing they do. It's really it's really impressive though. These 70, 80, 90-year-olds just hitting this bag, sweating. They walk out feeling so tough and accomplished, and it's fantastic.
I'm having images of a movie.
Yeah, it's so good. I mean, I these things just blew me away. Like I
Yeah.
had no idea how first of all how well it'd be received and how impactful boxing would be, because it was such like I don't want to box, like but they love it and they're so good at it.
I'm also thinking again, like, how do we bring it forward? I'm thinking for people who are on the fence about taking some self-defense classes, right?
Sure. Yeah.
It sounds like whether they realize it or not, you're probably going to get a lot of the same training that you could actually potentially put to use if you needed to.
And the thing is, like, there's so many self-imposed limitations. Well, I have osteoporosis, so I really can't do it because I might get a fracture, or my balance isn't good, or so they're limiting themselves before they've tried, because there's a zillion ways to modify things, and because just the act of participating is helping, and all the benefits, the socialization, the new learning, putting on boxing gloves for the first time just feels strange, and you don't have to hit it hard. If you can, great. But maybe it's for speed. Maybe it's thinking faster and moving faster and working on your balance in different ways. And so it's all modifiable. And, you got to get over the fact that, oh, I have a bad knee. I don't care. Like sit down and do it then. But, we're going to work through your excuses, you know?
What's interesting as well is when we think about most exercise related activities, they tend to bias more towards lower body where the big muscles are. Right?
Sure.
And what's interesting about this is that both boxing and rock climbing are primarily upper body focused. Not that there's no
Hmm.
lower body, but far more upper body engagement. Um, yeah, and different head movements. And so one of the things I think about with older adults is practicing balance. Well, the way to practice balance is practicing getting off balance and recovering,
Right.
right? Which is a
Yep.
big part of this as well, and your ability to react, which is one of the things that goes away the less active you are. It's not simply atrophy that's happening. Your ability to react,
Hmm.
you're detraining your ability to react, and so the likelihood of a fall being completed is
Hmm.
going up, right?
Yep.
What do you think is happening kind of in people's brains as they're doing these activities, and kind of what explains some of the reversal you're seeing in cognitive health?
Well, I think initially just the trying a new thing elevates your sympathetic nervous system. Like you're nervous, and your pupils dilate and you sweat a little more and you're paying attention really hard because you don't know what's coming, so you get that little adrenaline rise, and so just you're getting more activated just from the notion of trying, right? And then I think because we've looked at the research to see what improves what, like if you're a slow thinker, because processing speed does decline in aging. And people complain about it all the time. Oh, I just think so much slower than I used to. I can't think on my feet as quickly. I can't make a decision quickly. Like that is a common complaint. But when the research shows the faster you do something, the faster you think. And that has proved out for us in our programming that processing speed improves by doing things faster, and you add a little physical exertion to it, and it's just doubling your benefit. So, but all across all of the metrics have improved. All of those cognitive areas have elevated. I'm not going to say that there's not sometimes like an actual neurodegenerative process going on that you're battling against and you have to work around. And some of that we're not fixing everything. But even the high flyers who, score really well, they don't feel like they're having any issues with anything, and they score beautifully, we can make it better. You can always do better, a little faster, recall more numbers in a sequence than you did before. Like you can always do better, and you can always build new neural connections. So nobody's too good for the program either, right?
I'm thinking about things like neuroplasticity as an area
Mm-hmm.
which we used to think you know was relatively um,
It's
dried
fixed.
up
Yeah.
after the age of about 40 or so, right? We stopped
Mm-hmm.
learning was the old school thinking. Um, that's not the case anymore, right?
No, not at all. Even with people with Alzheimer's, like an advanced form of dementia, you can still use procedural learning or their motor learning, what like motor memory, to get benefits. And like a person, I'm gonna sorry, a little tangent here, but like if somebody with Alzheimer's moves to a new room and they don't know where the bathroom is, well, it's just repetition that gets them there to learn where the bathroom is. It's just maybe it'll take 3 months, but over and over and over, eventually they'll learn where the bathroom is. And it's not because you keep telling them where it is. It's not that they're remembering declaratively where it is. It's just the motor movements that they learn where it is. So there's a lot of things you can do from that circle the wagon approach, even for people with neurodegeneration using principles of neuroplasticity.
Right. And I think the other, which as hallmarks of aging being inflammation, essentially every form of exercise helps
Every,
reduce inflammation, not just not just below the neck or below the shoulders, but above the shoulders as well, right?
yep,
Because
for
that's
sure.
clearly an issue with brain health as we age.
Mm-hmm.
What when we think about our audience now who's doing their self assessments, what would be some of the early signs you would say to younger adults to maybe pay a little bit more attention to, or in the contrast to not get too worried about, because it's we're all trying to kind of do this balancing act between, is it something, or stressing about it won't help you either.
Right, right. Well, I mean, I know I live in this world and I think you do too. So some of this seems so like the advice does not seem like new to me, right? So I don't, it just seems obvious that for say a middle-aged woman going through menopause, 100% knows what brain fog feels like, like, or even younger than that, pregnancy, like hormonal changes and um, lifestyle changes and trauma or grief, or there's so many things that happen in life that impact your cognition. And, they leave their mark. They can leave their mark. And bad habits, smoking, drinking too much, stressful, stress that you're not managing well, things like that can really take a toll on your brain and last, unless you correct it or you start doing something about it earlier on, um, you're going to have a harder time. So my hope is that younger adults are getting the message that it's not just because it's aesthetically, you look better. It's not an aesthetical reason that you're going to take up exercise. It's not about that. It's not about being the skinny model. It's about being strong. It's about using, your brain and your body at the same time and solving complex problems and, managing your stress and coping with challenges. And, I don't know. I hope that the message is getting to the younger folks.
Well, I think well, in the circles you and I are in, I think people are tuned in, but you never know kind of once you go beyond the fringe what, because there's a lot of anxiety. When there's anxiety, people tend to just avoid. And so they miss the
Yeah.
opportunity to learn, right?
Mhm.
Um, and you've kind of touched on it again there, but just to call it out as something really clear to people is, if there's one thing to understand in all the work that's going on around brain health and aging, is it's this combination of movement and fast decisions.
Mhm.
Whatever, so classically dancing, ballroom dancing, right? One of the best activities. You're not going to get your heart rate up all that high doing ballroom dancing, but it's got all the elements going for it, that moving in space and having to make all these decisions so you don't run into everybody and don't step on your partner's toes too often. And yeah, those are just one example of, versus we kind of use that example of Sudoku puzzles. And I enjoy Sudoku puzzles, but I don't do them because I think I'm exercising my brain or getting
Right.
value
Right.
from it. It's just kind of for me, it's a way to turn everything else off and get
Right.
kind of focused. It's like mindfulness, if you will, in a different type of activity. There's lots of noise always in the supplement world. What do you see around the supplement world and kind of preserving brain health? It's not, I certainly hear people promoting certain things, but they're generally promoting molecules that the body makes naturally during exercise, coincidentally.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not the expert on supplements, and I find the research exhausting about it. Right now, it's the trend is vitamin D, creatine. Um, I don't know. I just think eating the rainbow is probably your best bet. Humans are designed to process foods all the way from the raw form, the fully formed form, through the body until it's digested, not like a pre-digested form of it. The body, it's a whole chain of chemical reactions and each one has a benefit along the way. So if you're taking you're taking that vitamin C tablet versus eating the orange, you're losing out on fiber and I don't know. So supplements are hard. Supplements are tricky. I definitely think there's some for certain reasons. I'm not the expert in that field, and I don't really promote things that I don't know much about.
Yeah, no, that's good. My view is not that dissimilar, and you can look and say, even on what we would describe as maybe some of the leading edge work that scientists are doing. When I say it's still mainstream, but leading edge, pushing the envelope, supplements are not a big part of what they're promoting, which should tell you something, right? It's that's just not a big function relative to the things that you're talking about with your program.
Yeah.
Um, maybe you can can you give me some examples of some people who've kind of come through the door, that like somebody's mother or father. These are the things I think that are really relatable for people to
Yeah.
connect with. That this is not just science. There's real people involved in this.
There's real people. Yeah. Oh my gosh, so many. Let's start with somebody like say with Parkinson's disease or who's doing okay at home. They've had some falls and their spouse is constantly on guard. So at this point, you're worried about the spouse as well because they're very stressed a lot of the time. But that person who maybe is thinking slower, not making good decisions, and then their movement's compromised too, comes to the program. We jazz them up with a lot of stuff, like you're going to do some rock steady boxing, you're going to climb the rock wall, you're going to do some exergaming, move faster, challenge your balance. And we're battling a neurodegenerative process, but we're making them stronger, like building muscle. We're flexing those brain muscles and making them think quicker. And all of those do produce outcomes that the spouse is saying, wow, this has really helped. He's sleeping better. I don't have to worry so much when he gets out of the chair. He's even more aware of when he's off balance or when he's, you know what I mean? The self-awareness might go up a little bit. And then of course the spouse's stress come down, which is, which is huge too. Yeah. But there's others. I mean, there's others of like people who very, very worried about their brain. Like something is very wrong. Something's off. And they're sure they're on the trajectory of dementia because my mother had it and I can't remember anything anymore. But you settle them down. We say, well, your scores are pretty good, but you're not feeling like they're very good, so it's something else going on. And we look at that again. Is it your sleep? Is it depression, anxiety? Maybe it's something else maybe you need more socialization, more support, more friends, somebody to check on you. It could be something else too. Again, the circle of wagons thing where you got to look at all the wagons and see what's missing. And I know that sounds kind of abstract, but there's so many people who fit that description, like something's a little off, and then we improve that thing and we give them more support and they do fine. They feel great.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. Let's switch gears if we can and talk about your latest. I won't say your latest. You've been working at it for a while in terms of your program that you're trying to build out now. That's clearly for people in need, but maybe you can talk to me about what that program is.
Okay, so Seniorscapes is my passion project. It's my side hustle passion project. I've been working on it for a dozen years probably. But yeah, so we're building a public park for seniors that is holistic and addresses all of the elements of healthy aging. And this is all, again, supported in the research. Asbury is a partner in this. So I'm wearing both hats as I talk about this
Sure.
park. But so yeah, it's designed on principles of healthy aging, senior focused amenities, meaning things like it's close to the parking lot, it's a flat surface, there's a bathroom and water fountain, shade, things that are just consideration, like helpful considerations for the older adult. And then it's also dementia friendly, meaning there's a split rail fence around the space. It keeps the skateboarders out, but it also keeps any wanderers from going off too far, and it keeps the space a little safe and contained. So we're building this park, Asbury Seniorscapes Park in Frederick, Maryland, and it opens next month. And it has features that address, again, these 6 tenets of healthy aging, which include there's amenities to practice your mobility, which a lot of people don't get that chance when they're in their little apartment, but you get to practice curbs and stairs and ramps in a safe place. There's something called the Surface Challenge, which is pretty cool, but it's this about 20-foot long set of parallel bars, but there's 5 panels that you step across. And there are rocks and grass and sticks and then these logs you kind of step over. So you get to practice different things, but you're holding on. There's 4 or 5 features for balance. So there's balance beams. parallel bars, stepping things. For balance, there's a whole section of fitness equipment. And I will say that if there's a senior park in other parts of the country, it's usually focused on the fitness equipment, so there's a whole fitness section. Resistance training is huge, and there's a bike and an arm bike, so a little cardio there too. There's a walking path around the whole space. There's brain games embedded in the space for cognitive health, putting green, music station, a couple pavilions. Yeah, so it's kind of a safe place for seniors to go. And when I say seniors, I mean anybody aging. I mean, I can go use this equipment just fine. I think it's great. I can bring my family. I can, it's meant to be a way to get seniors back in the community, enjoying park space that they pay their tax dollars into, but get no more than a bench to be spectators usually. So it's built for them and to their needs and their, whatever those could be. So it's coming.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of stuff there that you listed off that I haven't seen anything come close to that. There's a park that I run by. Well, there's two parks I run by. I start from one and usually turn around at the other. The one is huge and has multiple soccer fields and baseball diamonds and all sorts of areas. And then the other one is a beautiful small park right on the river, but it doesn't even have restrooms there.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
and it's got a perfect path. I see mostly seniors, but people of all ages walking along. There's a beautiful pathway and things. I'm thinking, boy, just a few things would make
A
it
few
so much
things.
better
Mm-hmm.
to get people out. And so it's part of. I always think of my friend Dr. Melissa Sunderman and Doctor Outdoors, right?
Yep. I
The
know her well.
a big part of her thing, and I absolutely support that, and we see the benefits. So, what can we do when we think about kind of taking some of these? So, your park example. So, what can we do beyond the one that you say is going to open in 6 months in Frederick, Maryland?
Well, it's
What's
going to
the
open 1 month.
opportunity here?
It opens next month. Um, gosh, well, oh my gosh, this is such a soapbox for me, Scott. But I think there should be one in every community, at least one. If there's a population of, if greater than 15% of the population is over the age of 65, I think there should be a park. I think they should be ubiquitous as children's playgrounds are, and dog parks, for crying out loud. There's 800 dog parks in the country in the large cities. It's like, what? How many are there for seniors? Like, not that many. Um, I think it's also, I'm getting pretty good at this culture change thing, right? Like going after the hard sell, and it's a matter of bending the world to your mission, because you're speaking to actual problems. So chronic disease management, it's something, again, every 91% of people over the age of 65 have at least one chronic disease, and 77% have two or more chronic diseases. So pretty much everybody has something. And do they know that you can actually not only treat the symptoms, but reverse the root cause of those things through lifestyle? Okay, is your excuse you don't have an accessible place to implement these things? Well, here you go. And I think it solves so many problems if it's sold right. It sells self accountability. It removes barriers. It educates people on just do these things. Everything helps. Just being in nature helps you make a better nutrition choice. Like that's in the research. I've been outside, I come inside and I choose the piece of fruit over the bag of chips. That's in the research. So it's just a matter of, can we just make this a commonplace thing and make everybody motivated to at least address your own stuff? Like it's not a pill, guys. Like stop being dependent on your pills that mask your symptoms. Let's go a little deeper. So
Right. I think where you're going with it is to normalize the activity versus writing a
sure.
prescription to go do these things, and to give if people aren't aware, there's kind of an old number of there's 10,000 more people turning 65. Well, that number's out of date. It's now 11,400 every day
Every
turning
day.
turning 65,
Mhm.
which is interesting, but it's on the back end on the mortality rate. So there's 1.7 new seniors for every one that dies, which means it's 170% growth rate.
Right.
This is
Wow.
a growing market in terms of more and
Hmm.
more people. It's not just a US thing. It's almost every country around the world is dealing with it, as birth rates have really plummeted relative to what they used to be. So it really is a big shift in our population demographic. And these really should be things, if we understood the cost of the programs, like at the parks that you're talking about. Um, it's not, we don't have to go get more green space. Largely it's there, right?
Right.
That's the biggest barrier is finding the green space for
Right.
projects like that. It's how do you use it more effectively in essentially in ways that will attract people. And when you have people there, it naturally almost takes care of itself, because you get groups of people, adults and older adults who want to volunteer and help look after it. So this park I told you about, the river,
Hmm.
it's largely maintained by retired adults who
Right.
go out and spend, a couple hours a week doing things along the park because they want to be out, they want to be contributing in some way, and it's an easy thing. It's an easy sell. We're lucky here. It's actually there's one woman who is in Charlottesville, Virginia here, who probably single-handedly, she's really got that, I think, big picture view like you do, and has been able to really impact the choices around services that we need and that are getting implemented. And once you explain it to people, it really is pretty obvious. It really
Right.
doesn't require the sell. It just requires you to sit down long enough to understand this is what the opportunity is, and these are all of the benefits of doing it. And you will make the returns on it are so much better, right? So you think about managing Alzheimer's, managing Parkinson's, the demand that places on your community.
Hmm.
Um, and so I'll kind of circle back and say, think about it in terms of the impact to a family. Right? We tend to think about these diseases as the individual, and so maybe you can probably speak to this better than I can. Talk talk a little bit, if you will, around kind of how cognitive decline impacts a family. Because
Oh gosh. Well,
you,
that's
you,
Scott. That's how this whole thing started because it was 2012. I'm an occupational therapist by training. I was in somebody's home where the girl there was my age. And she had two young sons in middle school, and she had two parents with Alzheimer's disease in different stages. And the father had early stage Alzheimer's. So he was not only forgetful, but really had poor insight into his own deficits, right? So he personality changes, he's argumentative, but it was his job to keep an eye on this girl's mother. The mother had middle stage Alzheimer's, and she was wandering a lot and hoarding and just couldn't complete a task without abandoning whatever she was doing. And so it was the husband's job to watch the wife while the daughter and the sons went to school and work. So when this daughter would come home from work with her boys, never knew what she'd find. One or both parents would be missing. The cars would be missing. The dad's on the roof. The mother's opened every can of cat food in the kitchen. She was exhausted, and she'd come in the house and lock the door, and nobody could leave because it was just so hard. And the father's, belligerent and yelling at her like nothing's wrong with him. But anyway, so she was just, as I met her and talked to her, she was having a meltdown. And I said, is there no place you can go? She's like, no, my boys can't play sports or go to their friends' houses. We can't, as a family, we can't go to the mall, to the movies, to a restaurant. There's nowhere we can go as a family. We're stuck in here. And this is my life. And I felt sick. And I was like, gosh, if I had a bag of money, I would build you a place where your whole family could go. And there would be like everything, something for everyone there. So she said, well, hurry up and find your bag of money and build my place. But I was driving home, and I was at a red light, and I looked to my left, my right, and there was a park. It's just a park I see every day with benches and the parents sitting around on the benches, the children playing together, the parents are socializing, the kids are on like age appropriate, developmentally appropriate equipment. Everybody's happy and having a ball and being healthy, and I said, why is there no park for seniors like this? And at the time, I'm thinking exclusively about dementia because it's so much on what I do. But I'm like, why is there not a place for these people too, and age appropriate equipment and blah, blah, blah. And so that's when I went to the mayor in the city of Frederick and I said, let's build a park for seniors. And he said, great idea. And I said, oh, it'll only take about 2 weeks. I'm pretty sure I can knock this out in 2 weeks. And this was 13 years ago. So I had a lot of learning to do on how to get this done. But in that time, I got my doctorate and did some research into healthy aging and how you really can knock out, again, circle the wagons around, aging in a healthy way and protecting those and providing opportunities for those with impairments already, and alleviate that caregiver burden, because here's a safe place to go. I can chill out while you walk around. It's just a place to go. It's a destination where everybody's needs are met. There's a children's playground right next door. The kids can play. Anyway, yeah. So it's designed within its own bigger park space as a place, just like a children's playground, just a place for the older adult to participate in life.
Well, I think there's certainly a growing awareness, and I think it maybe the timing is right because people are looking for, okay, so what should we do, right? And this is one of the few things that you can do, whether you're the one spearheading it in your community, or whether you're at your town council and you're thinking about, you're trying to leave your mark on your community of things you could do. So it's this is probably really just going to be an awareness thing, right? People hearing about it will be the difference. And that's, really what I'm hoping happens when you have these conversations with me and others. So, because it's really it's not rocket science to figure this out, right? There's so much evidence
So
now
obvious.
behind it. And you just kind of you can see the beauty of it is you can imagine what this looks like and you can show pictures when you get it done. And
it's real. It's amazing.
That's the model we can build off of.
Mm-hmm.
So as we think now, kind of looking forward, what gives you hope for aging and cognition, kind of given our history of coming to this point in time? I assume you're hopeful and positive around the things that we can do. What's your vision of what you think we could be looking at 20 years down the road, say, relative to where we have been the last 20 years?
Yeah, well, I think the stereotype of grandma knitting on the rocking chair, is that stereotyped image is sort of fading out. And I think our generation really wants to stay active and doesn't really see a finality in retirement at this age and kicking back and sitting in your lazy boy. I think this generation wants to keep moving. That's my hope. That's my vision. I think there's a lot of push on longevity now, and it's not just about living longer, but living healthier, living a better wealth span. Yeah, so I think my hope is that the boomers and the Gen X's and, we're all going to just age better, age more in a more intentional way, not just let it happen to you. You're going to be more proactive about it.
Yeah, and I think we see it, within the boomers. One of the things they learned early in life was we're not going to put up with this crap anymore, right? From when they were young, right, to seeing kind of getting older, saying, no, we're not going to put up with this crap anymore. Not that it's universal, but there's enough that are willing to roll up their sleeves and do some hard work and speak up, right? And that's, I think, the difference is, we'll hopefully see more voice coming from seniors as well, which has typically been part of the problem. Right? They tend to get ignored. So, but that doesn't mean that's the way it has to always be. So,
right.
Yeah. Well, this is this is just fascinating work. I think it's just so positive, Sue, that that what you've been able to do, and I'm just wondering how we can help accelerate it and essentially scale it up. That's my world, is scale up, right? In terms of how do we take good ideas and now 10x and 100x them.
Yeah.
Maybe one question I would ask for you is, when we go back, and I see this with my students, well, how can how can I do is there a self-assessment that I can do to give me some idea of where I am? Again, it's the anxiety that's perhaps more, it may not be real. Is there anything you can suggest to people as a resource that maybe, some sort of a screening or some kind of way to give them any insights without having to sign up with go through a clinical experience?
Right. Well, I honestly don't know the answer to that because I don't play on those apps very often, but I know that they exist. I think AARP even has a tool on their website that you can go to and take that cognitive screening. I think that the more beneficial thing though, like if you get a screen done by your physician, even, and they give you a score, congratulations, you scored a 27 on your MOCA. Okay, thanks. Like they don't know what that means. Like I think the more important thing is the interpretation of the score and what do you do about it. And that's where, again, that information isn't as commonplace as I'd like it to be. I'm not answering your question about a resource because I can't think of one that exists like that. But here's what you do, unless it's our program.
Right, that's the barrier to entry, right? Just to
Right.
get into your program and all that. That's why I said so. So that's one of the barriers we need to address.
Exactly.
Is to really scale it out. And there's online programs, but they are somewhat problematic. They aren't necessarily helpful. They may give you, bad information potentially. And anyway, it's clearly a need, and I think there's some physicians who are proactive around it. My physician performed one when I went in for my annual wellness check, which was a pleasant surprise. But he said I had to do it on my own. There was nothing really offered to me. He said he figured it out. He went and got the resource. He didn't make it up.
Right.
But in terms of, it wasn't presented to him as here's something you should be doing for all your patients over 60, at some frequency. So I'm hoping we'll get there. So these are all the things we can, all little things. So maybe the advice is, if your physician isn't offering it, ask for it.
Ask for it.
Right? Because that's usually what they will respond somehow for you. So, well, this has been wonderful, Sue. Thank you so much for taking time out of all the things that you have going on to talk to us about really, I think, what's on the horizon of positive news. I'm imagining we're only going to see some building upon this and see more and more positive results as we start to learn more what works, and also then start to bring it forward in earlier ages, and not wait for the diagnosis to do things.
Right. I'm looking forward to that day too.
Okay. I'd like to keep track on how your program's going. Maybe check in sometime down the road and get a gauge, because I can't imagine it's going to be static. I'm sure it's going to continue to grow. So.
Oh yeah, I hope so.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for having me, Scott.
Yeah, this has been a great conversation to be continued.
Okay, to be continued.
Hope you enjoyed today's show. Great to have you part of our over 10,000 strong WealthSpan community. Remember to subscribe if you'd like to learn about our upcoming shows. And as always, make sure you provide some feedback, whether that's a thumbs up or a comment, a question. They're all welcome. If you'd like to subscribe to our quarterly newsletter, you can do that at wealthspan.com. We're always looking for show ideas, or maybe you think you'd like to be a guest. Again, please reach out to book a motivational talk or inquire about our leadership workshops. Email me at info@wealthspan.com. Until next time, stay engaged, stay curious, and take good care of you and those in your care.